movie. Because, you know, I'm always going to advocate for killer lizards.
Do you jerk off to that?
King Godzilla.
Fuzzily defined. Did they say he's a dinosaur? I don't know. Probably not.
Barney is a dinosaur for our imagination.
That's the part you could come.
Imagination, you.
Did you guys all get to see the Wolfman tonight?
The who?
The Wolfman Dave put a video up. It was pretty sweet. I really liked it.
Wolfman Dave. Oh, right.
Yeah, that's me. I've actually been
fuck, Dustin, you're his neighbor. You don't know what the fuck that
my
is?
I have no idea.
Film.
Yeah, he takes his shirt off and
And
says,
I'll
"Look at
go
my
and buy
hair.
it."
I'm now a wolf."
No. No, but check it out. It's actually before this episode. I was doing a test run. It's really hot underneath my transformation uniform. But anyways, this is episode number 18 on Inside Movies Galore. Starting this podcast. Welcome all. Thanks again for coming back. And tonight we are going to talk about Troll 89, Trolls 2
Hell
from
yeah.
1990, and some of the bastard children after it.
Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down.
Alrighty, so I'm gonna start with you, Andrew. Why don't you saw Troll?
Give it up for Andrew.
Troll.
Maybe you can do a quick synopsis of it.
Well, if I have to, well, okay. Do you want a quick synopsis or do you want a really condensed synopsis?
Well, here I'll tell a little
Like
bit.
the first time you had your penis touched and it exploded, real quick like that.
Oh, then a really quick, then a condensed synopsis. It is basically
a witch helps Harry Potter fight magical creatures.
The film,
damn it,
film
you
is
beat me to
directed
the
by
punch, you bastard.
the film is directed by John Carl Buechler, or Buechler, or however you pronounce it, and it's produced by Charles Band from Empire Pictures.
Charles Band.
Andrew.
Ah, yes. Oh, Charles Band, how I love your Empire series of films. Anything from Tourist Trap to Dolls to freaking Troll. This movie I felt was definitely, it has that Charles Band quality that was there in the 80s and late 70s. Basically a troll by the name of oh, for the love of God, I can't even think of his name for the life of me now.
Turok.
Thank you, Turok. Basically finds himself inside an apartment building with a whole bunch of people, including a very pedophile-looking Sonny Bono, who's supposed to be like this sex god, which I always thought was like so bizarre, but yet hilarious. And of course, he starts going from apartment to apartment, creating this whole entire world of like mythical creatures and elves and fairies and all this stuff. And you know, I thought, you know, it was like the fact that they had two characters in there of Harry Potter and Harry Potter Jr., which, by the way, Harry Potter Jr. was actually played by the same actor who played Atreyu in the Neverending Story, Part 1. Except that he just doesn't have the long hair, nor does he look that young. And it's like, it kind of threw me for a loop, but I'm like, holy shit, my childhood in a horror movie, yay! But apparently Turok actually takes over the body of his younger sister Wendy and starts going around, you know, basically turning people into trolls and fairies and goblins and what have you. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm just waiting for David Bowie to just pop out of nowhere as the Goblin King with his gigantic package for delivery. than his pants. And I actually thought it was actually one of the better movies within the Empire series because the effects were actually on point, and there was a lot of actors that you would actually see later on, or at least one actor you would see later on in many upon many of Charles's films later on throughout the years, which is
Okay.
I can't pronounce his name for the life of me.
Michael Moriarty. I'm
not talking about Sherlock Holmes here.
I just named the good actor. I'm sorry. He was the first like prosecutor in Law and Order when Law and Order was new, and he was in Q. That's who I thought you were.
Well, there was Noah Hathaway, Michael Moriarty, Shelley Hack, Jenny Beck, Sonny Bono.
Oh, for the love of God, I can't think of his
And
name.
you can't forget about our lovely young lady from Seinfeld.
Oh, yes.
Who just got diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh, good Lord.
Oh, fuck it. Let's cancel this issue then.
Anyways, welcome, Celeste.
Hello.
What was your experience with Troll from 1989? Was this your first time seeing it, or?
It was not. I've seen both of them a few times.
Okay.
Troll is a really good movie in its own way. It's interesting. It's got a quirky character. It's pretty 80s. Troll 2 is an awful movie that I still love.
She's a true sadomasochist.
I liked the weird vegetarian concept of it. I'm a vegetarian, so I actually was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
I'll give you that.
Did you drink your Nilbog tonight?
Why was it called Trolls, and why did it have goblins in it if it's trolls?
I know. That's what I was trying to think. Brandon,
there
was
already a movie called Goblin.
True. And hobgoblins.
Very true.
Troll was
Brandon, what? Go ahead.
I was going to say, Troll was actually, I remember from last time's discussion was about, a lot of things were about how you experienced the movie. And Troll actually was one of the first movies that scared me as a kid. Now, as an adult, that's a ridiculous concept. But as a kid, I had seen that first transformation scene where the guy turns into the cocoon, and that just was traumatizing for a really long time.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing that scene, too, and I was like, man, he looks bloated. Get that man a Pepto-Bismol.
I remember seeing Troll and thinking, am I watching Poltergeist or am I watching Troll?
Yes, there's similarities.
It's surprising that somebody would have been really like. Although I don't know, my perceptions of like what people find scary have been shaken a little bit because yesterday I met this 13-year-old kid who him and his mom are going to be Jason and his mom for Halloween. But Scooby-Doo is supposedly too scary for this kid after dark. I'm so confused.
I call Slinks on that one.
Well, hey, give him a break because Scooby-Doo's about a talking dog that can walk more or less and behave like a human. Which, if
Terrifying.
you had that happen in real life, that'd be pretty scary.
Yeah.
Because really, when you think about it, the idea of Jason Voorhees is not all that far removed from reality, other than the fact that he keeps coming back from the dead. But like, other than that, he's fairly recognizable as
not an anthropomorphic stoner dog.
Exactly. Like if you actually saw that in real life, that would be horrifying.
Yeah, but we had Mr. Ed the Talking Horse. Which did he come?
And that was also horrifying.
And wasn't there Francis the Talking Mule?
Yeah.
I think it was Francis the Talking Mule.
That was.
Well, and if you're a Far Side fan, you'll remember the infamous Mr. Ed and Francis the Talking Mule debates. For all you Far Side fans out there.
Nice.
What was your first scene of Troll?
Well, you know what? I'm not really into the fairies and type of shit like that, but this movie, I actually like.
I wouldn't be so sure. I heard some guys down at the docks that could tell you different.
Maybe don't.
I knew that joke was coming.
You just want me to go ahead and batwing you again. I get it, dude.
That's okay.
You not necessarily represent those.
Oh yeah,
That
I
pussy.
like dipping my nuts all the time. But I those type of movies, those fantasy type movies like that, I'm not really into. But since this had like the puppet type shit, you know, where the goblins were dressed up, I actually enjoyed the movie. I think it flowed well actually for the type of movie that it was, and I think they probably put in a lot of work into those apartment rooms where they made them look like forests.
Those were spectacular.
Yeah,
I
I really like that.
The set design on a production value that the band brings to almost every film that he's on is at least up to par.
Quick thought: do you think Shout Factory could do a release of this like they did with Dolls?
It's an interesting thought.
It's possible.
Well, it's already out.
I mean, nobody.
Troll's already out. I think they are the ones that released it.
They did do a re-release of the two-pack not long ago, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think that was Shout Factory that did it.
It was.
So
Really?
I'm not really sure what Dustin's talking about.
Yeah.
So does that already? So Dave,
I was thinking too.
Hey, Dave, you didn't notice Blade though, right? The Charles Band connection.
Oh yeah,
So, I noticed that.
There were posters for some of the Full Moon movies, like on the kids in the kids' bedroom.
oh yeah, for the first one, yeah, there were.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a poster, a flag of Darryl Strawberry, like the San Francisco 49ers. There's a bunch of those older type flags in there. So, like when you go and look back on movies like that, I like looking at the old horror posters or even like the sport team flags. Just to, kind of brings back some memories once you look at a film that's 30 years old again.
Oh yeah. Well, on that subject, I found it interesting that, well, for the first Troll that you saw a lot of, like, you saw the Dungeon Master poster and you saw a few other things. It was kind of self-advertising, but also you saw 49ers and you saw, I think it was Chicago Cubs on there for the first one. And the second one, don't ask me how they were able to do this. I would love to, because I would love to know how they were able to do this. In the second one, they had Warner Brothers characters out the ass. Like they had Batman, Superman, they had the Tasmanian Devil, they had Bugs Bunny. Well, and they had Disney characters there too. Like they had Mickey and Minnie Mouse, they had Winnie the Pooh, and they also had Garfield on there in a T-shirt. It's like, how did they get all of these copyrighted characters that are from competing companies all together in the same movie that's not even owned by Warner Brothers or anything like that? I really don't know, and I would love to know the answer to that.
I only noticed Garfield and Batman.
Oh, there's a lot more.
Well, wasn't it
Especially back then, they had to put a ban on advertisement during films, especially with copyrights on patents and stuff like that. So
I wouldn't be surprised if Charles Band though just said fuck it and did what he wanted, right? Because he kind of does that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe the idea was that it was so low profile they were just like, screw it, they're never gonna watch this. Maybe, I don't know.
Well,
Italy too?
Well, I was about to say in Troll 2, technically it wasn't even Charles Band that even did that one. So,
yeah.
But
I
was about to say that was the first instance where you actually had Batman and Superman both on the same screen at the same time, but they just weren't being played by horrible actors and making a bomb in the box office.
Kim.
Oh wait, never mind. This one did bomb. Never mind.
Kim,
you were special.
What was your
died in the mud?
Your take on Troll from 1989?
Which one?
Oh, is Kim still there?
Oh, Kim, she had to bow out. Sorry.
Oh, okay. That's okay. In any case, Celeste, what would have been your favorite character on Troll?
I don't know if I had a favorite character. I liked the whole like setup, so I liked what everybody contributed to it, and I thought they were all interesting. Like, I liked the brother, I liked the witch, I liked the little girl. You know, I liked the parents because they were kind of weird and quirky in their own way.
See, okay. And did you have a favorite scene?
I did in Troll 2 when the kid pees on the dinner.
You can't piss on hospitality.
I'd heard about that
I won't allow it.
but I hadn't seen it, and I was really relieved that they didn't actually like show anything. So it's like, okay, this movie's known for being really bad. What are they gonna do? Oh, okay, they just cut away. Thank God.
You liked it because it was very. You liked it because it was very autobiographical.
I do pee on my dinner. Yeah.
I thought so.
Speaking about Troll 2, Troll 2 was directed by Claudio Fragasso under the pseudonym Drake Floyd.
Because it was so bad, he didn't want to associate with it.
Well, here's a little bit of backstory on that. A little bit of backstory on that was that Claudio Fragasso is one of the most prolific exploitation directors in Italy, and was very rampant with his work of all different kinds. And for whatever reason with this film, I guess because they had some degree of American distribution, that they tried their best to make it look and feel American, even though the crew didn't speak a lick of English, and they insisted that the American actors speak the lines of dialogue as written, which is why it sounds so awkward. On top of the dialogue itself being bad, but it's just like their delivery is awkward, because guess what? It's written by non-English speakers, so obviously it doesn't work. Not
to mention the possibility of poison ivy being derived from the Credence character.
Oh, but yeah, that's the thing that they that's why it sounds so weird, because again, that'd be like us trying to write a Chinese movie and we don't speak Chinese, and yet they insisted that the cast say the lines exactly as written. So that's why it's got this weird, ambiguous feel to it, even though it's supposed to be an American film.
That makes sense.
Oh, yeah. So I think that the first one, I think it had some Italian production influence as well, but I think that it was a lot more American in its crew than the second one was.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Because in the second one, it was a non-English speaking crew, production team and all that stuff, and a non-English speaking director. And it was like, essentially, the lines were delivered so awkwardly, and yet somehow, like, the most memorable scenes in that movie were always just a horrible overacting that was done by all the actors, including the infamous "Oh my God" scene. They're eating her, and then they're gonna eat me. Oh my God!
Yeah, that was the best.
I literally think to myself, like, oh my God, I think I know where the director from Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 got his idea for Garbage Day from. Was from that scene alone. It's like, it's so weird in the movie, but yet when you actually watch it as a whole, it's like, okay, yeah, it actually makes complete sense. And when you actually know the backstory to it, yeah, it makes complete another sense.
What I can't understand is, knowing that they do multiple takes, how that was what was chosen.
They probably just thought to themselves that was the most American way to do it. Apparently, I guess.
Maybe the director just stripped down nude, and the kid was like, "Oh my God!"
Well,
yeah,
it was
like land on his face.
Yeah, the story would have been presented better if the grandfather actually would have been sitting in a chair shirtless.
Well, you know that Paul Schrader for the movie The Canyons, I think to get Lindsay Lohan out of her trailer, I think he showed up to her trailer naked,
Oh, good lord.
if I'm not mistaken.
Sounds
Yeah, so
beautiful.
yeah, but
What a nasty bitch.
yeah. But speaking of trailers and troll stuff, I looked up the name of the movie that the young boys are watching in the trailer.
Oh,
in
yeah.
the RV rather, and it's a 1983 movie called Grunts, I think, or Grunt.
Yeah.
And isn't it like a Turkish film?
No, it's actually an Italian film. I actually
Okay.
was watching the Cinemassacre Monster Madness of
Oh yeah.
the Troll trilogy, and they explain, that it was like so much of a random scene, like a monkey that puts down a glowing egg, and all of a sudden starts rocketing through his ass into the air. It's like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. I've watched.
know?
I that's the thing. Prior to this, I've gotten the troll movies kind of up the ass in regard to research because everybody's reviewed them. Like
Oh yeah.
like James Rolfe with Cinemassacre, like Brad Jones with the Cinema Snob. He did
Yeah.
all of the troll movies, all four movies that comprise the troll trilogy. He's reviewed all of them, so believe me, I've gotten the analysis of these movies down.
I've
pretty
only
well.
seen the first two.
Yeah, I've had two.
Yeah,
only the first
evidently
two.
there was a
There are
third
more?
and a fourth.
Yeah, there's four, the four movies, Troll 1, Troll 2, and then there's a movie called Quest for the Mighty Sword, which has gone
That's
under
what
the,
it was.
yeah,
Yeah.
well it's gone under the name Troll, alternate titles of Troll 3, Ator 4, which is another series, the Ator films. And
Yeah.
then there's
Are
another
they good?
I don't think so, but there's another film
Yeah.
called the Crawl. There's another film called The Crawlers. There's another film called The Crawlers, which went under the alternate titles of Contamination Point 7, which I think is what the Scream Factory title is.
Yeah.
And then that also had the alternate title of Troll 3. It's a little, I was talking to
Troll
David about
3
this.
was from 1993. It was
Yeah.
directed by Joe D'Amato and Fabrizio Laurenti.
Yeah, Joe D'Amato. The other big Italian exploitation director of the same period.
Sexploitation.
Yeah,
And hopefully Rob Zombie can remake these.
yeah.
Oh.
Let's not lose our minds now.
The interesting thing I think is that the Troll trilogy, aka 4 films, technically, it's kind of funny how none of those movies had anything remotely to do with each other, and yet they got strung together into a series of sorts. Not unlike the way that Cloverfield, 10 Cloverfield Lane, and now God Particle have been strung together into a series of sorts, despite the fact that none of those have anything to do with each other and were never intended to be in a series. They just kind of got tooled into that,
If I'd seen Troll like back when it was new, and then like, oh, Troll 2, I can't wait, I would have been so pissed. Like if I didn't know about it beforehand, because Troll was wonderful and this was fucking bad. I'm sorry, I think I forgot. I wanted to talk about Troll. Yeah. I loved that. That was.
But you have to think that there are definitely some one-liners in Troll 2 that even though they were so badly said, that you can definitely take them and mimic them or mock them.
Oh yeah,
as it were to be, and that's the thing that's the thing that's comedic about the film.
Oh, I'm not saying it wasn't funny. It was really damn funny. It would have just been like, I was expecting a wonderful fantasy adventure, like the last time. What the fuck is this? I need beer.
Speaking of beer, that has nothing to do with it. What did you guys think of the weird vegetarian thing they had going on? I was like always so confused by it. I mean, it seemed really weird and out of place and like really strongly pushed that vegetarian message. I'm like, did somebody have an agenda here?
It was like the message was heavy-handed. It was like somebody was coming at you with a bat, but they didn't know they were supposed to swing it, so they're trying to choke you with it.
Yeah, it was very ham-fisted in an odd way.
You know what? Ham-fisted. It's a vegetarian thing.
people were
Yeah,
meant
exactly.
Which, you know, what's funny is that this movie, Troll 2 is 1990, and then 3 years prior was one of the other most infamous movies of all time, Leonard Part 6, with the now equally infamous Bill Cosby as the star. And in there, it's all the villain is a vegetarian, and how does he defeat her with meat? You know, so it's the same principle here.
Yeah,
Not-
vegetarianism was not very common back then. I had trouble eating at restaurants back then. You know, it was not easy for us to travel, my family. So I'm thinking about it. I'm like, that was not a very common message. So,
Well, not only that, but it was like any kind of emerging subculture, emerging minority group in that time, that it's like the other. And so inevitably when a movie comes out, it's like, oh, it's that weird thing that we need to talk about because it's topical, but we're not going to treat it in any kind of dignified fashion because it's not acceptable yet.
right.
They were still eating. As I thought, they were still eating meat. It was just meat processed into like plant matter. It was like.
Oh my God! It was Soylent Green all over again.
It's
Soda made from
They're eating
the purple. Like it was so dumb.
But you know, that was actually the one thing I was going to point out that I thought it was like the weirdest thing. It's like it was reverse veganism almost. Like, you know, they're going from meat to plantation, and it's like, how in God's, like, I'd actually would love to actually ask a vegan's opinion on this because, you know, to see, you know, what they think about this, because I think it's kind of a bit of an oxymoron. But, you know, then again,
ask away.
You're up, so let's
Well,
speaking to it.
well, it's like it's so weird. Like, okay, you go from like flesh and bones to like plant matter, and then you're being devoured, like, you know, like cannibals almost. It's like it's cannibalism, but it's like with vegetation. It boggles my brain too much. You know. Although it kind of reminds me of the new Troma movie, Return to Nukem High, when they're kind of making fun of the whole organic food stuff, you know, the Troma Organic Food Stuff Company, you know, where it's like they literally say, you know, they have this toxic green goop, and they're going, oh, you want to go green? Well, you can't get any more green than this. And I'm like, that's literally what it reminds me of. Like, I'm looking at this, it's like, okay, you know, I've heard of going green, but this is just absolutely ridiculous beyond all belief, in my opinion. You know, because, like, you have milk, which obviously is not a vegan option, okay, by a long shot. You know, but you have everything else in there. You know, you have, like, apples and corn and all this other... And the weird thing was the food in there, okay? I don't know if anyone's going to talk about this, but the food in there looked like freaking desserts. Okay?
It was nasty looking.
It was like that weird, like, kind of like, desserts you would see at like parties and all that stuff.
Like that Jello that kind of looked like in those bunk cake type.
Yes, or that green
shapes.
goo. Yeah, or even that green fluff stuff and all that stuff.
In the first one,
creepy crawlered these bastards.
In the first one, they got those burgers from that joint when they were all sitting on the floor eating them, and those burgers look nasty.
Oh,
yeah, rat burgers.
Guacamole.
So speaking of trolls and milk, interesting historical context that the very next year, 1991, was Ernest Scared Stupid, which the big weakness, the big weakness of the troll was milk. So, or Miak, as
Ernest. Miak. You never thought I could find it around this time of the year.
Mistakes, but
suspiciously trolls.
I don't know what the connection is with milk and trolls, if that was intentional.
Well, I think like in Ernest Scared Stupid, they actually did kind of explain it to say that, you know, the heart of a child, you know, a mother's love, and all of a sudden they just realized, oh wait, milk, of course. You know,
so
it's like
breast milk wins the day, basically.
Yes.
Always.
Hooray for boobies.
Yes, indeed.
Now,
Give it up for the
Have you-
left-handed lassies.
Have
Well,
you?
and similarly in Troll 2, it's the power of goodness that defeats the goblins. So
I thought it was a
yeah.
trip. I thought it was a double decker bologna sandwich that won the day.
Well, that too, but so we're tying it in with Leonard Part 6 and Ernest Scared Stupid. So there's like this
I
big
know.
elaborate. The mythology is more elaborate than the Pixar theory.
I was just about to say that we're coming up with like more theories than anything else.
I know,
And we're not
but
even more than 10 facts right now.
Illuminati.
yeah, it's a very odd kind of confluence of coincidentally similar things all at the same time period. But and I highly doubt that they had anything to do with each other in any kind of direct, influential kind of way.
But there is still,
but-
a somewhat semblance of connection in more ways than, I guess, one.
You're right.
Well, that is kind of the funny thing, actually. Now that you bring that up, that was something that Brad Jones, the cinema snob, had brought up, was that even though the movies, the Troll series, they didn't have anything to do with each other, that there was this kind of odd thematic or stylistic similarities in the sense, especially like he was saying that Troll 2 and Troll 3, which would have been Contamination Point 7, that they both had that kind of Italian production that's trying too hard to be American feel. They got plants, they got, just a similar way of delivering the lines. And then between Troll 1 and Troll 2, you have, relatively similar looking creatures, even though obviously trolls and goblins aren't the same. But you got also a heavy emphasis on vegetation and fantasy and storybooks and all that stuff. So they may not be quite as far away as we think.
Although, interestingly enough, though, with Troll 2, there is a weird connection I have actually found with Silent Night, Deadly Night, with the grandpa.
Oh, yeah.
It was kind of like, I'm watching it, I'm like going, wait, isn't that the grandpa from Silent Night, Deadly Night? And it's like, like, eerily, like, it's so weird how the grandpa just shows up out of nowhere, like he's been dead. But then you have, like, the grandpa in Silent Night, Deadly Night who's just pretty much brain dead until he's all alone with a kid. And all of a sudden he comes up with the insane theory about Santa Claus and all that stuff. I'm like, I was sitting there thinking, like, oh my God, what is it with the 80s of, like, crazy old men? I mean, it's like, you always have these crazy people in these movies, and they're always old and decrepit. It's almost like they're trying to say, like, they were predicting senilism or Alzheimer's long before it was even a thing.
No, I think that a lot of them are retired priests, I think. So that's where you get that from.
Ah, that explains it.
Well,
I knew I felt a little Father McFelt me up in that.
Yes, there you go.
What's funny is that you could easily do some kind of either sincere or a parody academic analysis about how Troll 2 is really a metaphor for a child having to come to grips with his grief over his grandfather's death.
Oh.
Well, you could think about it like that, but the grandpa thing, like, it was cool, but it seemed to have kind of its own rules. It's like, oh, that's so sad. He's like seeing his grandpa, and then like, it plays like grandpa is just in the kid's mind for almost the whole thing. And then at the end, grandpa is like punching out dudes, and it's like, wait, what's happening? He's a ghost. And then he gets like
a benevolent spirit.
He kicks ass for the Lord.
Yeah, grandpa.
That he does. Kind of reminds me of the grandpa in Santa's sleigh. He's an orange angel sent down from heaven to fight the forces of evil.
He has to be nice for 1,000 years.
Yeah, by shotgun.
Oh, and here's a question I had: what was the deal with the mole that they all had in the shape of a leaf? Is that just a sign that they were goblins, or what?
Huh.
Well, I was. That's the thing that I was curious about because 4-leaf clovers, that's more of an Irish thing.
Yeah,
so
I was about to say.
Yeah,
it's like goblins are more Norse mythology.
Well, but then you got the druids in there,
And Germans.
Well,
love that kind of stuff.
Damn dirty krauts.
Oh,
so they're like throwing all kinds of stuff in the mix.
I think what they just pretty much did. I think they
Anything from European fantasy, huh?
Yeah.
I think
guess.
no. I think they
I
took
think they
every
were
European
trying-
fantasy and threw it into a blender and just hit frappe. You know, and just came up with Troll 2.
Well, that's kind of what we do anyway. Like we just
And then
We
went down
do,
to the
yeah.
dollar store and grabbed whatever masks they could find.
Those masks were
Exactly.
awful. They were
They
awful
were
masks. They
really
were so
awful.
They
bad.
were totally awful.
There were a
they were
couple
Totally
times
awful.
where I was like, how could people like look at this and think this was okay?
They almost kind of reminded me. There was this version of March of the Wooden Soldiers that Keanu Reeves was in with.
Oh, you're thinking of Babes in Toyland.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
Babes
about
in
to say,
Toyland,
yeah, Babes in Toyland,
from
yeah.
1993, and there was
Yeah.
this eyeless bird was in there, and it kind of reminded me of how crappy the suits and masks were.
Oh yeah.
So
It was almost like the giant claw, almost. You know, it was so bad, but yet, you know, it was absolutely over the top ridiculous, but yet somehow people thought, oh well, this is going to be totally believable.
I think the
It's
giant
not.
claw actually worked a little bit better.
Good point.
Maybe the whole movie was just made for kids' imagination, and adults really shouldn't look at it because kids might actually find that stuff believable and fun.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Which,
Very true.
That's a possibility. I
That
think.
has-
Possibility.
That
When
has
you're looking at
like
it from a
weird,
child's
like,
perspective,
seduction scene if it's meant for kids.
that
That
that's
was
Oh,
the
yeah.
thing. Has any of us seen the film when we were a child?
Just
No.
no,
we were like what 3?
Troll 2.
I wasn't even born when those movies came out.
I was in the war, man. I was in the war.
He was down in the bunker.
He
But,
died face down in the mud.
Getting that old radio signal, eh?
God damn it! I love that. I love that line.
The what I find kind of interesting with well, two things. We got the corn seduction.
Oh
scene,
God,
which is
That had to
interesting,
be the-
shall we say?
that was so corny. I couldn't even. I couldn't
Quite
stand
literally,
it.
it was corny.
That's the reason
I really didn't
Corn.
have.
Ugh.
I really didn't have an ear for it. I really think they were just husking it at this point. You know.
They were. Which,
I mean,
what the
but-
thing that's funny is that scene was like, you had to take like 2 short steps and it would have been like a porn scene.
Oh yeah, that's what I was waiting on.
that's probably where a lot of the splashing sites are coming from.
Perhaps, but
That's taking
Kind
me
of like-
back to
that what you
Troll 1 with
Is
how
that what you
young
did? Children of the Corn?
the
Ah,
Listen to this now.
she just went there.
Oh, we went there.
He walks among the corn.
but the other thing that's interesting in Troll 1, as we have somewhat touched on, is
Mother Abigail.
the fact that it has the Troll 1 has a surprising amount of similarities to Harry Potter, even though that obviously first book didn't come out until I think 97.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I had heard that claim from both the Cinema Snob and from James Rolfe, and I was like, oh yeah, it's just a coincidence or whatever. But the funny part is when you actually watch it, you're like, huh, this has a lot more in common with it than you'd think.
Exactly.
the name
Yeah,
is Harry
'cause-
Potter and there's magic, but that's all about.
Well, there's magic, there's trolls, the story structure,
The
is
power of goodness.
power of goodness, and it's also a kid having to go face these creatures and challenges to save. I mean, it kind of reminded me of Chamber of Secrets a little bit.
Yeah.
In the climax, and the witch is very, very similar
That's
to
right.
Professor.
There was that
Well, she's-
that Harry Potter angle.
Well, and
that,
she's
have we
very-
really touched on that.
Well, she's very similar to Professor McGonagall in a way.
I can see
And
that.
yeah, she
Yeah.
has a similar look and role. And you've got
You
kind of
gotta laugh. I never watched Harry Potter.
you've got like the
I
kind of
suppose I've never read Harry Potter.
you've got like
I
the kind
have.
of tenement apartment environment, which is similar to Surrey, even though there it was a house. But in England, obviously, in that neighborhood, the houses are like very much smaller and more identical than they are here. But
Oh yeah.
same kind of principle. No glasses on the child, but his attire, actually, Harry Potter Jr.'s attire was actually pretty similar to Harry's, outside of his school uniform. I mean, but yeah, I find that kind of interesting.
Yeah, you ruined it.
Yeah, it was, but bottom line is, it was beyond just a mere coincidence of the name. It was similar with themes, certain kind of characters, certain little details like that.
So you think that broad stole it from Charles Band?
Well, I don't know. It's
I highly doubt that.
I highly doubt it too, but at the same time, it's one of those things where well, to be fair, like J.K. Rowling wasn't the first person to do a wizard or witches. I mean, those have been around forever. Neither was J.R.R. Tolkien to do any of that stuff, to do elves or dwarves or anything. I mean, some of that stuff is just ingrained in, European folklore and everything.
They had kind of a little bit of a token, almost like a little token kind of theme in there, like with the professor.
And what's up with that breaking into song and making it an almost musical? The first one.
Oh, okay. So that scene was actually supposed to be a lot longer. And it was actually supposed to be a musical number, but unfortunately, due to like time constraints and all that stuff, and I think like budget, and all that stuff, they basically just had all the trolls and goblins and all that stuff just basically grunting, basically. To the music and all that stuff. It was actually supposed to be like an actual musical number in there. Like I actually watched
I'm glad they cut that out. Couldn't ruin the movie for me.
Yeah, we could do without that.
True.
I liked that Frank Welker.
I actually wouldn't mind seeing an uncut version of the film, just to see what the musical number would have actually sounded.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
But,
anybody who's a fan of voice acting will recognize Frank Welker as the voice of Turok the Troll when he's in his troll.
That kind of reminds me.
Yeah, when he's in troll
possible
form.
that the Japanese game was, or the Turok, the game was actually
no, it's
somewhat
that's
taken from.
That's Turok instead of
Turok. Like Turok is totally different. I love Turok, by the way.
I do too.
Incredible. Turok is like a Native American who fights dinosaurs and like has high-tech guns. It's hard to explain, but Turok is totally different and great in all ways.
I just had a random thought there.
I thought it was Ethiopian.
I think he is. Oh, what was? I think Kiowa Apache is the one is where he's like his tribe in the 90s. I want to say. That sounds right. Sorry if I'm wrong. And anybody happens to be listening.
Just Google it.
And my favorite character in Troll was definitely Gary. Definitely Gary.
Was that Gary Shanley?
No, I'm talking about the talking mushroom.
AKA Toad.
That thing was cute.
AKA the thing that sounded like Minnie Mouse screaming whenever it talked.
Yeah, a little bit.
It was adorable.
Oh, I loved it though. It's so cute. And the way it's hidden though, it's like absolutely ridiculous.
Is really cute. That's really cute. And that's another element that's kind of similar to at least early Harry Potter, is that they could actually have some cute creatures in there. Not on the mandrakes in Chamber of Secrets were not terribly cute, but they were like anthropomorphic planted creatures. The mushroom in this one was a lot cuter, but it's the same.
Well, it's a mandrake. You know the mythology behind that, right?
Yeah, I do. But I mean, I'm saying that are you saying that the mushroom was a different form of it, or?
No, I'm just saying that, like a friendly talking mushroom.
It was magical. Just magical.
You don't necessarily. They're not supposed to be cute.
If you think of it in token mythology, all things, whether it was trees, plants, everything used to be alive. and used to be able to talk, including animals and whatnot. So there used to be spirits within.
I think that
And
they used to talk to the people that used to eat the mushrooms. Then they would think they were talking to him. I think you're getting confused.
I could see that.
You know, you
It's
Anyway.
called Shrooms. It was pretty good.
Shrimp is an excellent movie.
But in any case, did anyone else have anything else to add?
Actually, I thought it was interesting when you brought up J.K. Rowling with that before. Actually, though, it is known that she has borrowed heavily from other sources for Harry Potter. I mean, Worst Witch, for instance, was pretty much. I mean, shoot, they even sued her because of similarities. So it wouldn't surprise me if she had seen this and said, you know, I can use this, this, and this from this.
Yeah, which I mean, well, and she even said that her big influences were, I think, the works of Jane Austen and older British boarding school literature.
I
Which
did not get any Jane Austen from it.
from Harry Potter.
Not at all.
Well, that's what. Well, I don't know if that's necessarily what went into her writing. I think it's more the idea that she wasn't really trying to write a children's book per se, but more like a book that anybody could enjoy without like a specific demographic, even though it got marketed towards children by Scholastic in our country. But
Right.
yeah, but she took a lot of influence from older literature and from like that British boarding school fiction, which I guess was a genre at the time in years
Like
past.
Jane Eyre. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think, but again, the point needs to remain that she was not the first one to do witches and wizards. She wasn't. I mean, all of that stuff is all taken from someplace and repurposed. I mean, that's what fiction is, And Troll and Troll 2, same kind of idea, taking mythology and repurposing it for your own needs. The one thing we can say with J.K. Rowling is that her internal logic and internal mythology seems to hold up a whole lot better than Troll 2, which mixes goblins with vegetarianism, with a grandpa that's a ghost, but he's not a ghost, but he is a ghost, but he's not a ghost. And
I
with
was
the
watching Troll
druids-
2 and trying to figure out where the trolls were.
Oh
I
no,
don't know about you.
they never showed up. Maybe they were in the.
I know.
Maybe they were in the
I'm still
post.
waiting for
Maybe they were in the post credit scene.
it. Which
Now-
one?
This is something I kind of really want. I really want to touch on with the first Troll. Like the English professor, like his character.
Oh yeah.
There was when he gets turned like into an elf. Like the scene before that had an awful lot more depth than I was really expecting from a movie like this. Like I watched that like wow. He's talking about, like finding out, he wouldn't grow, like what his condition was, and, how he wished he could escape into fantasy. And, you find out he's an English professor, and he's sort of describing, like, Tolkien-esque things.
Yeah, and he didn't like chocolate milk either.
Well,
It was interesting that you're right, that it had a lot of
I'm talking about, like, the poignancy of that.
sensitivity. Yeah.
Just a random thought here. The young
actor.
witch, the young
What?
witch,
Well,
the young witch.
When they switched,
When they switched, when she came up after, actually, when you saw her going through the foolery or whatnot, she kind of reminded me of the blonde that was in Something Wicked This Way Comes. Which was, she kind of reminded me of her in a sense when I saw her towards the end, but I'm pretty sure that it wasn't her per se. It's just it was just a random thought that passed through my mind. I was thinking,
oh, this is
could it be her?
interesting that June Lockhart was Eunice St. Clair, and then her daughter Anne Lockhart was young Eunice St. Clair, so that's how they were able to do that.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they were the same person and they just aged her up or what, but that explains it. But what's interesting is that I really did think that character of Malcolm Mallory was interesting, partially because it gave the actor Phil Fondacaro gave him some screen time outside of the troll suit, but it also created a kind of interesting. Well, yeah, because he was also Torok the troll, but it gave him some screen time outside of that. But it also kind of created a tie between Torok and a human who was, obviously has dwarfism and wants to escape from the body.
Reality.
Yeah, well, the reality and the body in which one happens to have been born. So, I mean that could be a movie in and of itself.
Yeah, right.
You could tell that Turok had some kind of like an admiration or something for that. It was like, because Turok was a human who was turned into a troll, and he was like, "You're okay living like this?"
Yeah. Well,
It was Michael Moriarty, not Michael Myers.
Well, and also the fact that I really thought that the character of Torok was interesting in the sense that he is the antagonist, and yet he had that turns people into creatures and all that. But he is very tender towards them, and seems to care for Wendy and for Malcolm Mallory, and so he's got that kind of interesting, really expressive face that has a lot of intelligence behind it, but it can also look scary. And I have to give him a lot of credit for having a very nuanced face for that creature that could be expressive within the makeup.
Yeah.
Right. Like in that scene, I was like, "Is he gonna do something good for this guy?"
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it was sort of hard to tell because it's like, okay, are they being killed? Are they being morphed from the creatures? Are being morphed from the creatures? And his was definitely seemed far less violent and like almost a good deed. Like it was.
Yeah.
I like that.
Correct me or enlighten me, but I don't recall in any other literature, fairy tales, or folklore that I've read that I don't know of trolls having magic rings. But then again, this is a witch that has like a she's
Power
got
of the Schwartz.
Yeah, well, he's got the power of the Schwartz, and she's got a sword on the wall, not unlike Gandalf. But she's also got this kind of fence spike, which substitutes for a wand or a staff. I mean,
What are you gonna do with that? Harpoon a whale?
I guess. I mean, whatever does it for you, does it for you.
She blows.
Yeah.
I like how she just had like random weapons.
This isn't a wizard staff. This is Hammond's staff.
Yeah, which
I got it from Aquaman.
Which, I mean, give him credit though for doing something different than the usual wand or staff. I'll give him that. And I also like that you had
the princess will marry me.
Well, and also
Inconceivable.
Also give credit for this princess becoming the witch, but also becoming a very take charge person, and who uses a sword. Again, this is pre-film version of Lord of the Rings, at least live action. Live action. I mean, they had the animated one and they had the books, obviously. But
is that good, Bookie Man?
Yeah, but they had a witch or wizard having a sword and having something different than your usual staff or wand, and a strong female character in this rather unexpected place or time, which is kind of neat.
I agree.
Who was formerly a princess, so you got it all going on. Because I don't think Disney's ever done that where they had a princess become a witch, but not like a.
They've at least shown a princess from a previous movie in almost every princess film.
Well, and they had Elsa who has powers, but it's not quite the same thing.
Which in because you actually see the Tangled princess in there somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the frying pan.
She can use that frying pan even more than Peach can in terms of you know.
Great running gag. Like whoever wrote that deserves a medal.
She's got quite
Right?
the forehand for that.
In any case, did anyone else
what,
have? Go ahead.
With real quick, like with the what you mentioned about, it's like, wizards don't usually like have weapons like that. That reminds me of a line from the Lost World Jurassic Park, like the book.
Oh yeah.
It's something to the effect of, too many scientists are so focused on being complete nerds. So and so, I can't remember the guy's name, who they talk about. He was able to win. He was a gold medal Olympiad. He was a gold medal Olympiad. He was a gold medal like runner or something. I can't remember the word they used. While also having like a Nobel Prize, and it's like, well, yeah, you can be smart and be active and like forceful.
Right.
So.
Alrighty. Did anyone else have anything else to add?
Did we actually talk about the fact that the Troll 2's director, of course, still fights today, but that is his film is a great film.
Well, not in the way you think it is. That's
Classic.
well, that reminds me of another random line from a class of 1984. It's like, I think he's a real brilliant kid. Well, so was the Marquis de Sade.
Mm-hmm. Which okay, here's a question for the group, because we've watched Troll 2 and we've watched The Room, both of which are kind of some of the ultimate so bad at they're good movies, at least in terms of the public opinion. Troll 2 often gets the title of best worst movie, even to the point of having the documentary best worst movie named after that designation. But
which was directed by the child star in the film.
And yet The Disaster Artist, the book about the making of The Room, is getting made into this potentially Oscar-worthy film directed by James Franco and starring James Franco. So then that question then becomes, how do we compare the two in terms of so bad their goodness?
Well, it's kind of like, it's interesting. I think if it's a so bad it's good movie, it has to have somewhat of a cult following.
Yeah.
Much like something like the Garbage Pail Kids movie. Okay. Like, that has an ultimate cult following right there. And unfortunately with The Room and Troll 2 now being like so embedded in like the mainstream, they really don't have much of a cult following anymore because everyone kind of knows all about both of these movies.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like they lost their cult status, like, when they became really popular and all that stuff.
Well,
I
then
give
you
it
gotta.
to Troll 2 because The Room was just bad. It wasn't even good at all.
The other thing you gotta throw in there.
I could watch Troll 2 again. I won't watch
So
The
I have
Room.
to agree with us on it being a totally bad film.
I'd much rather watch The Room again personally, but anyway, the other one.
God, you're a fucking sadist, dude. That movie wanted me to shoot myself in the balls, man.
I love it. The other one that we're forgetting about is the movie Ed Wood, based on the films of.
Oh,
Ed
yeah.
Wood,
That was fucking bad.
I love that movie.
The movie Ed Wood is
movie I love.
Oh, yeah, I love it too. But the movie Ed Wood is an Oscar-winning film, like 2 Oscars, and it's based on the quote-unquote worst director ever, his work. So I guess at the point of what I'm trying to get across is that you can have these movies that get lambasted by critics, by most people, and yet they can get a loving, supportive fan base over the years. And the derivative media about the phenomenon can then be these great works of art. So bottom line is that there is hope even for the works that get derided, that they can be beloved in their own way. And there's a place for that, because there is something there's a great it was in Siskel and Ebert, they did a review of the movie Ed Wood, and Roger Ebert told the story of the Hollywood producer who I don't know if he had
Kind
a
of
name.
like the incredibly strange creatures who stopped living and became mixed up zombies.
Yeah, I don't remember the producer's name, but he told the story of a Hollywood producer who would stand up and applaud at every movie he saw because he understood how hard it was to get a movie made. And that was sort of the philosophy of the movie Ed Wood. And I would dare say that to a certain degree, movies that are so lambasted, but they also, you can tell, had a lot of heart in them or had a lot of passion, even though the finished product didn't work out as well, or they didn't work out in the way that mainstream audiences are used to experiencing film.
I think with the room,
Nonetheless,
you have two different like mixed crowds, two
definitely.
different sides of a coin,
Yeah,
and
you do. Well,
you're
you
either
have
going to
that with
love it or
any.
hate it.
Yeah, well, you do with any one of those, because there's people who just will not get it, no matter what,
Oh,
without a doubt. But the point is that, regardless, that any film is difficult to make, and I know that from having done it, many times, at least on the short film level. Any film is difficult to make, and you hope it turns out good. Sometimes it's your own hubris that brings you down. Sometimes it's forces beyond your control. Whatever it is, but it's nonetheless the same forces that create a masterpiece can also create a film that is not well received at its time and yet finds an audience over time. So we kind of have to give our hats off a little bit to stuff that gets a fan base, even if we're not necessarily involved in it, because that's a whole lot more than a lot of films get, where they just get forgotten and no one ever thinks about them again.
No,
That's
actually,
true.
that makes me think of, there was a show called Mission Hill. It was like an animated series, and they did.
Oh my God! Yes.
Yeah, Plan 9 for Mission Hill. They did an episode where it's basically everything you just said, Dane.
Yeah.
So it's about characters who live in an apartment building, and one of them is this old guy. He lives with his boyfriend. And at some point, one of the characters finds out, oh, you used to do movies? And they find his movie, which is very clearly supposed to be Plan 9 from outer space. And he convinces the local theater to play it, not realizing how horribly ashamed of it this guy is. And it ends up becoming extremely popular. And, throughout the course of the episode, you see kind of, what happened. Originally, it had a great script. It had big name actors. And things just kind of kept happening. The director, he fell in love with the guy that he's with now, and cast him in the movie, and they were rejected for that. There's a line where the actor who was going to play the lead was Charlton Hestopoulos.
Oh yeah.
Scene where
they shortened it to Charlton Heston and all that stuff.
And there's a line where it's how did that guy get this? How did that guy get this part? Anything he did, I can do better. And somebody whispers in his ear, and he's like, "Bye."
I ain't doing that.
Well, there's actually a lot of real world validity to back up what you're saying. There's a great documentary called Tales from the Script, I think came out in 2009. It was all about screenwriters' experiences in Hollywood, and one of them, I can't remember who, was saying that he said, I think the general public would be shocked to see how many movies that turn out poorly actually started off as good scripts, which is, I'm sure, very true, that you have a germ of an idea, something that people thought was worth pursuing, and then either the corporate element jerry-rigged with it, or I assume sometimes you get weird eccentrics like Claudio Fragasso, like Tommy Wiseau and all that. Sometimes you get the corporate entity that just monkeys with it too much, and it becomes a fraction of what it could have been. So all those things can happen. And I do think that, generally speaking, in terms of bad movies that get a following, I think a lot of them, more often than not, tend to be the works of eccentrics like Edward D. Wood Jr., like Tommy Wiseau, like Claudio Fragasso, and people that are auteurs in their own right. They just happen to not fall in line with that which most audiences are used to experiencing from film. But nonetheless, I do think we need to tip our hats to those people that come along and are able to do that which most filmmakers would dream of doing, even though the route that they took to get there was sort of a backwards, twisty-turny route.
Yeah, and the episode had a really good ending too. Like he finally goes into the theater. They have a great running gag with the theater where it's like, one night only, encore performance extended through the week, playing next 6 months.
Yeah, exactly.
At the end Monday. At the end of the episode, he finally goes to a screening of this movie that he's been embarrassed about for almost his whole life. And he's sitting behind a couple of guys, and they're like, "Wow, this is awesome, man! Whoever found this deserves a medal. What about the guy who directed it?" And he just kind of smiles, like, "Yeah." And that's the end of the episode, and it was really lovely. I think it's actually on YouTube. Plan 9 from Mission Hill. We'll see that.
In any case, is there any other thing anyone wants to speak up about?
Well, I guess just to kind of put a capper on it, at least for me, it would be that regardless of, this is just kind of to whoever's out there listening who's a filmmaker, whatever kind of thing you want to do, whatever kind of film you want to make, as Lloyd Kaufman, quoting Shakespeare, would say, to thine own self be true. So in other words, make that which speaks to you most, what matters in your heart, and make it how you want to make it, and do it with every ounce of sincerity and hard work that you have to give. And whether it comes out in such a way that everyone loves it immediately, or whether it happens to be lucky enough to get a fan base through a less conventional means, I think that sincerity and total commitment is what makes those things special and what makes them happen. Because again, there's masterpieces that take off right away. There's films that take a while to get going, and then there's stuff like Troll 2 or The Room, which take the ultimate kind of back roads to finding an audience. But I really do think if there's one magic ingredient, if there is one, it would be sincerity and total commitment, which that's technically two ingredients, but whatever.
Alrighty. I think I'm going to wrap this up here. I think we definitely had some very good points tonight. Thank you, everyone. Does anyone have any ideas about what they want to talk next week?
Yes.
I still say killer lizards.
Oh, for God's sakes.
Celeste?
Tokyo Zombie.
Ooh. I think we should do a trauma film eventually.
Well, let us do Tokyo Zombie first.
Yay!
Why not?
And then maybe we'll pick actually, I'm thinking the German film Killer Condoms.
Oh, yeah.
Oh!
I haven't seen that one yet, actually.
Oh, hell yeah, man. That's the one that I want to see. My trauma.
It's a story of your life. I know. Just calm down, okay?
Man, I can't wait till I see you in real life, Dan. I'm gonna knock this shit out of you, boy.
I know. We're very anxious to see your sordid tale on screen. But just calm down. We'll get there. Just relax. Yeah, I'll let your buddies at the docks know that it's screening, so they can all show up and support you.
Alrighty. Celeste.
Have you got ass raped your whole life, Dan? I mean, seriously, dude, like your whole fucking life.
You might need some Astroglide for that.
On this little here.
Celeste, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and where you're from?
All right, I'm Celeste. I am a co-host on the Horror Host TV show Dedgar's Dark Coffin Classics. You can find our stuff on vimeo.com/ddcc. I'm also the host for the Milwaukee burlesque troupe Glamour Junkies Burlesque. You can find us on Facebook at Glamour Junkies. Just look that up.
Alrighty. Andrew, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do? Andrew?
Ah, yes. Hello.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
He was hoping that you would address him by his secret name, Cheeky Monkey.
Okay, cheeky monkey.
Oh,
Shoot.
stop. Oh, stop.
That's what his buddies by the docks know him as.
Okay.
No. They only know me as Salmon at the docks.
Where are these docks that you keep talking about?
Oh, you know
have
that.
to ask
It's a
afford it.
club. If you don't know about the docks, you don't need to know about the docks.
You know what it is, Dustin. I saw you there last night.
Well,
About
okay.
3rd and North.
I went on like a Dead by Daylight rampage last night. Like I played till like 6 a.m.
So that's what they call it these days.
Damn, you must have went through a whole bottle of lotion, buddy.
I did drink a lot.
You're not supposed to drink the lotion, Dustin. You'll get sick.
You put the
The
lotion,
lotion on the
body.
skin. Otherwise, it gets the hose again.
That was like
The yoga hose.
that was like Buffalo Bill trying to be British.
In any case,
yes, darling. Put the lotion on its skin.
Andrew, why don't you continue and tell us what you do and where you're from?
Ah, yes. My name is Andrew Tromaton. I am from out of the lovely small community of Tromaville, Illinois, that was built upon ancient Indian burial grounds, which
ancient Tromahawk sacred Indian burial ground.
Exactly, which has now a toxic waste dump on top of it. I live in a small, tiny shack right next to some radiation barrels. This is where I broadcast out of my lovely abode, known as Tromadoo. I usually do a live cast horror thing review show called the Horrible Horrors Reviews on Facebook and all that stuff.
Wow, can I follow you?
Why, yes, you can.
Thank you, sir.
He'll call the police though, so be careful.
Yeah, I know. I was just about to say.
Well, it depends.
Yeah, exactly. I also am in the midst of working on a new band called The Radiations. Basically, a more or less a newer horror punk band that is more or less a hybrid of my old band, the Tromatons, which has more of a sort of a Voltaire kind of approach to it, if you will. If anyone's ever heard of Aurelio Voltaire.
Yeah, I have.
Don't you touch me, 'cause I'm evil.
There you go. Exactly.
I've met him. He's nice.
I actually have a friend of mine that actually works with him a lot, actually. And I actually just recently was listening to his kids' album. Was it Spooky Songs for Creepy Kids? And my 3-year-old niece absolutely loves the song Brains.
Oh,
She
yeah,
loves
from
dancing
Billy and Mandy, yeah.
Exactly. She loves dancing to that. But
I love that song, and I love that show.
oh, so do I.
I miss Billy and Mandy.
Me
But
too.
yeah, I basically have a
Making
vast
them
knowledge
later.
of useless trivia for anything horror movie related, including Trauma and all that stuff. And I actually work for Trauma as the official Chicagoland Toxie and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And of course, Celeste can attest to this because she has amazing butt rubbing skills. And it was very lucky I was wearing a tutu over those tights. Otherwise, it would have been very awkward. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, fun time
Alrighty.
with that by all.
Yes.
Brandon, why don't you
Exactly.
tell us a little bit about what you do and where you're from?
Yes, well, I run a YouTube channel called Septum Sin versus the World. We are in the midst of our Halloween celebration, where we are currently posting a review of a horror movie every day. Currently in the Camp Blood series. Just recently posted a review for part 2 today. So that's pretty much what we do. We always like subscribers and views.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Dane, why don't you tell us?
I think you turned into a werewolf there for a minute.
Oh, we're doing
It's getting into my transformation period.
Yeah. I think that there's some Tampax for that.
Yeah,
Sorry. Even that shit don't work on me.
Dane's got to pull him out
I
of
get
his ass
jockeyed.
first.
So anyway, yeah, I'm Dane Kyle, the resident independent writer-director of the show, based out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and you can find me on YouTube at my channel is The Dane Kyle, Keil, and there you can watch my black and white German expressionist silent film Eternus, which has just gotten accepted into the American Horrors Film Festival.
Yay.
And yes, thank you. And just got shown on Dudger's Dark Coffin Classics.
Yay.
Yeah, after Nosferatu. You can watch the trailer for my black and white film noir, which should hopefully be done before too long. And it's still been lingering. It's been languishing in post for a while. And plus, I'm getting ready to shoot a short film for a horror anthology. And casting is starting up on my first feature. So a lot of important things coming my way.
Very cool. Tito, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, where you're from?
I'm from Detroit. I do have a house these days. I was in Gay for Prey. Ha 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 ha. And I was just an extra. I was a protester. That just got released by Rock Bottom Video. I've been in a couple other films. Also produced a couple films. I've been thinking about actually doing a film with some cartoon figures and putting something together, but I haven't started yet.
Cartoon figures like something like Cool World, or?
No, pretty much like superheroes. I got a bunch of crazy shit I'm going to put together and mix things up. You know, maybe have some fucking rape scenes, something that you'd really enjoy, my man.
Yeah, it's fun for the whole family.
No, I ain't worried about the family and the kids, man. Lock them motherfuckers up.
Lock them up so that you can get to them later. That's what you're saying.
Fuck, dude. We can't eat meat, man, so they're no good. You know what I mean?
Well,
that's why we get the goblins to convert them into plant matter.
If
no,
not,
dude,
I
we
might
can
be
have full
hungry.
food, man. Right? We got full food, dude. Full
Oh,
food.
what's left over?
What's left over, dude? I don't know, because if you eat a whole bunch of fruit, man, it just comes out and it's like a pile, a mound, man. So then you got to drink some coffee to wash that shit down.
Brandon, we already got to you, right?
Yep.
Dave, clean those ears out, dude.
Dustin, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Oh, well,
You just cut your hand off.
Third time this week.
well, they grow back. Lizard.
God damn it.
I go to UWM. I'm trying to learn how to do programming, which is really hard. And I can't do. I'm just a film fan, really. And I do have something to plug. God, what's going on? Fuck. All right, weirdos. Anyway,
Oh, he's got his Wolfman cane. That's cool.
Yeah, I don't think he has any clothes on. He took all his clothes off. Can you see that?
Oh, I see.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Anyway, so I was in a movie last year called Batman and Jesus. It's a documentary, kind of. It's hard to classify after actually having seen it.
Where's the link, buddy?
You can find it at igg.me/at/Batman and Jesus. I think that's where you can buy it. It was made here in Milwaukee. And it's basically about comparing mythologies to religions. And they spend a hell of a lot of time on Batman. So it was pretty cool. So it premiered at this convention I was at this weekend, and I actually made it. I stayed in the cut of the film. I'm in like the intro scene.
Nice.
Awesome. So same time next week.
You got another
I'll be
hairball,
there.
Dave?
Yeah, I was trying to cough out Dane, but he kept wanting to go back in.
Oh, for God's sakes.
Yeah, I haven't been on in a few weeks, man, but I gotta admit, I had more fun on this one, Dave.
But in any case, I dedicate this episode to the
Tom Petty or what?
I heard he's actually
not Tom
alive.
Petty.
Save your sympathy.
Hey, Celeste,
I actually
Celeste,
dedicate this to
Yes.
both Tom
you
Petty
didn't mention the fact
and
that
the people
I
that
changed my picture in there.
that
You didn't like that picture I had in there.
the massacre
Oh,
on
yeah.
Sunday.
So I've been changing
my
it up every
camera's
time
on.
I come in.
Hang on.
What the hell are you doing?
I was. I hit a button
I saw
to fix
boobies.
something.
I saw boobies.
Like, well, hey, at least it wasn't summer. That would have been a
Oh,
surprise.
it is really hot up here.
Well, any case,
everybody else
basically I did
so
this episode
when I saw that cat for a moment, I thought it was like your butt, and I was like, oh no.
to the people that died in the massacre on Sunday evening, and my heart actually goes out to those people because a lot of horror fans probably died.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
In any case,
Well, and it needs to be said that for as much as we love talking about horror films, which are obviously largely make-believe and fun and all that, it should be said that turning on the news, that's the real horror movie right there.
It is.
And,
It's just
Oh, yeah.
depressing.
yeah, and
Totally.
the and the real monsters don't look like Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers or the creature from the Black Lagoon. They look like
You and me.
you and me.
yeah, they look like the shooter who apparently was a very ordinary person prior to committing the massacre. So let that be a lesson to you listening.
So we're all killers. Anyways,
fun.
Or we have well, I really do believe that all of us have the capacity to be killers or saints or some variation thereof. It just really depends on what we
Some
choose
have
to do.
more than others.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of, you can get into a whole nature versus nurture thing, but it's like,
Quite honestly, you never know until you're in a situation.
yeah,
And some people that you would think could be able to handle certain things in stressful situations, they actually collapse. And then somebody that you wouldn't expect actually rises up to be the top.
yeah.
So that's a difficult thing to really talk about unless people are actually in scenarios and situations like that.
It's very true, but it just it's a worthy point to bring up, given the nature of this show and relative to what happens in real life.
Yep, this is how we work. We set you up with jokes, and then we just hit you with all the heavy stuff.
Yeah, right.
So anyway,
well, in any case,
so David, what'd you say about your mom's panties again? What was that?
leave my mom's panties out of it, man.
By the way, Dustin, that is the first time my butt has ever gotten an oh no, I'll have you know. Thought of my butt.
Well, I try not to think about you guys that way, so.
It's kind of hard, though.
That's the wrong word. I need a better mask. This one sucks.
Hey, what do you expect for 99 cents?
Yeah, right.
That is exactly what I paid for what I suppose. So, but I'm getting a better one soon. Coming to you.
Actually, if you just paint that, it would look much better anyways.
There are tutorials.
I ended up not really wearing it a whole lot at that party anyway, but yeah, whatever.
Well, in any case, everyone say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.